Hello BookTube. Today I'm going to be giving you the final part of my review of For Your Eyes Only by Ian Fleming, which was published in 1960, and this is the 8th of the original James Bond books. I read this as a general reread of those books, which consist of 12 novels and 2 collections of short stories, of which this is the first. My review of For Your Eyes Only is different from my review of the other Bond books that I've read so far. Purely because this being a collection of short stories, I've decided instead of reviewing it as a whole, I'm reviewing the stories individually. And in this video, I'm going to be reviewing the fifth and final story in the collection, which is called the Hildebrand. Make sure I get that right. It is the Hildebrand Rarity. Bond is in the Seychelles, where he's been sent by M to do a sort of basic security check. The Royal Navy has a base in Mauritius. The Maldives. Mauritius is in the West Indies. The Maldives, and they're having some trouble with communists, and so the Royal Navy's thinking of moving their main base to the Seychelles. But they want to have a security check just to make sure they're not going to have similar trouble. And so Embassy dispatched Bond out there to have a look. Bond has had a look around and found there's no security difficulties whatsoever. And he, at the beginning of the book, he's sort of waiting his last week in the Seychelles before he can get his boat back home to Britain. He is then hired by his friend Fidel Barbe, who's sort of a scion of the local family that effectively runs everything on the Seychelles. And he offers Bond some work, which is that there's an American millionaire called Milton Crest who's coming to go fishing for a rare fish, to put it in the Smithsonian, called the Hildebrand Rarity. And he's willing to pay Bond some money for it, for the job, and so Bond, having nothing else to do, agrees to go along. He meets Milton Crest and really doesn't like him. He is this sort of loud, unpleasant 50-ish man in his mid-50s who really sort of gets Bond back immediately. In the book, in the story, he's described as a man who sees himself as a Hemingway hero and expects everybody else to see him that way. And that really does fit the character. Bond also gets to meet Milton Crest's wife, who is she's called Liz. She's a nice woman, but it becomes clear very early on to Bond that she is being abused by Crest, and it sort of turns Bond off Milton Crest even more. And so they get aboard the ship. They get aboard Milton Crest's boat. They go off to the island. They're on the island. They look around. Bond and Fidel are looking around the coast of the island, this small island which is not very big. Trying to find it. They don't find it initially, and so there's over dinner. Milton Crest, whilst Bond and Fidel are having some lunch, Milton Crest takes Bond's goggles and goes to have a look around, and he finds it. Though it has a very funny line where Crest finds it and he's pointing down and jumping, and Bond says either the bastards found the fish or he's stepped on a catarfish, which I found fun. I don't know why, but I found that line really funny. Anyway, they do find it, and then they capture it. Though the way Crest does it is that he pours in poison into the water, which won't affect humans but will suffocate every fish that goes near it. And Bond finds this sort of distasteful. It sort of adds to his general distaste of Crest generally. Then they get on the boat and they start their journey back to the Seychelles. That night, while celebrating, Crest gets really drunk and starts being sort of really rude to Bond and also to Fidel. And when his wife sort of tries to intervene and sort of calm things down, he then makes it clear to her that she's going to pay for doing that, and Bond hears her being beaten by Crest at night. Then Crest, as usually happens, sleeps out in a hammock on deck, and this night, however, he's snoring, which can keep Bond awake. So Bond decides if after 10 minutes the story keeps him awake, he's going to get up and go down to Fidel Barbay's room and sleep on the floor. I should say Bond is actually sleeping out on a part on the deck as well, but out. I think out of the main deck is there where Cress is sleeping, and Bond, there's a staircase, and Bond is sleeping there, so they can't see each other. But then as Bond decides he's going to get up and move, he hears a choking sound and then running footsteps. And Bond goes up to the deck and he sees that Crest is dead, and he's had the Hildebrand Rarity rammed down his throat and he's choked to death on it. Now, Bond doesn't know whether Fidel Barbay did it or Liz Crest did it, but frankly he doesn't care. The fact that Milton Crest is dead isn't that bothered to him. And so Bond sort of gets the fish out of Crest's mouth, cleans it up and puts it back in the preservation jar. And then he cuts the rope on the on the hammock, which Crest was lying in, and then throws Crest's body overboard to make it look like he fell out of it at night, and so it'll just be an accident. Then Bond goes back to bed and wakes up the next morning, and sort of then it's discovered that Crest is dead. Crest is missing. Sorry. Bond is suspicious. Still isn't quite sure who did it, whether Fidel Barbay or Liz Crest did it, but he's slowly but surely coming around. He slowly but surely comes around to the idea that Liz Crest may well have done it. And so the story ends with Bond having said that he would travel back with Liz Crest, trying to come up with a way of getting out of it, as he doesn't quite trust her. I enjoyed this story. It's a nice little story. Milton Crest was a genuinely unpleasant character, and so his death was actually quite satisfying, especially the way it happened. The other characters were small but well defined. Fidel Barbay came across as a very sort of friendly character who you can use, the sort of person you can believe really does exist. And so Milton Crest is also believable in his unpleasantness. One of the things I did find interesting, and this is something that sort of is recurring through these short stories, is reference to the British Empire. How Bond is as much involved in sort of dealing with the defence of the empire as he's in sort of more broadly his sort of activities as a spider in the Cold War, which is something I don't think you really get you definitely don't get in the films, and to a certain degree you don't necessarily get in many of the books. You do, but it does appear, for example, in Doctor No, and to an extent in Live and Let Die. But it's interesting that it's a sort of running theme to these collections, to this collection of short stories, and particularly those that are set in with most of them, because with the exception of Risiko, they're almost all set in either the Caribbean or they're all set in a British colonial holding. So that I found interesting. So I'll finish this now. I just wanted, before I go on, before I end, just apologise, because I should have been putting out these videos, got this review done days ago. It's just that I've had things get in the way at home. I've got a relative who's somewhat ill, and so I've been dealing with that at the moment. So normal service should resume this coming week. Just to discuss those plans. Obviously, I'm going to be reading. I'm going to start today Thunderbolt, which is this will be the 9th book. And once I've read this, which I should do this week, I will then do another live stream where I talk about this time technically 5 books that I've read. So that will be From Russia with Love, Doctor No, Goldfinger, For Your Eyes Only, and then of course Thunderbolt. The reason I've decided to do 5 instead of 4 is because For Your Eyes Only is a collection of short stories, and that seems a bit unbalanced if I just did that as the sort of 4 books. But with Thunderbolt, it makes extremely more sense. In that, I'm obviously going to discuss those, and I also will discuss. I think a bit of the sort of real life elements that are discussed in these that are referred to in the various sort of stories, as well as I think talking about James Bond and the British Empire, since that's something that sort of really does seem to come through in these in the stories that I've read. These sort of four, or what should I say, by the time I get to this 5 stories, that will probably be sometime. It will either be at the end of this coming week or at the beginning of next, depending when I get this finished, and also depending on other live streams, because there are certain live streams I personally like to watch on BookTube, and I really don't want to do one that conflicts with somebody else's, if only because I want to be able to watch it. So with that, I will say goodbye BookTube, and I will see you in a bit.